Morning everyone, this is Brit Simon. So I'm hoping you can hear me. I'm on the road and I wasn't planning to make a video, but clearly the visa bulletin having been published this morning needs a little bit of comment, shall we say. So the visa bulletin has been published and the government have apparently lost their mind. That's really, the only explanation I can think of it. They have practiced numerical control all the way through the year so far, issuing a few thousand or a few hundred, numbers increasing every month, carefully monitoring the process to ensure that, as the rules dictate, that numerical control is enforced in the process, that lower case numbers get a better chance than higher case numbers. That's the way the law is written for the DV lottery. That's the way things should work. But by making regions current unnecessarily, which is what has happened today, or increasing the numbers to an extraordinary amount, they remove the ability to some extent to make this a predictable process, an understandable process. And they introduce a level of chaos into the process. Now, it doesn't mean that numerical control is gone completely. I'll explain that in a moment. But it is going to lead to some weird stuff going on. And so let me explain that. Firstly, I should explain I've published a blog article this morning at BritSimonSays.com. And you should probably go and read that, because I've probably gathered my thoughts in that better than I'm going to do in this quick video. So go ahead to BritSimonSays.com and have a read of that article, which is about the visa bulletin being published. Okay, so Africa went current, EU went to 50,000, Asia to 27.5. I mean, these are nuts numbers. These are massive increases over the previous month, and completely unjustified. What will happen is that the embassy capacity will become the determining factor of whether you get your interview or not. So if you're let me explain this with an example. Let's say you're an Australian, and you're at Sydney Embassy, right? And your case number 2650, right? So you just got current, because case numbers up to 2700 are current for Oceania, and that means everyone under 2700 has a chance. That means case number 2699 and below, right? So 2700 itself isn't current, it's numbers below the visa bulletin number. However, Sydney has not shown the capacity, availability to be able to handle the number of cases between 2,000 and 2,700. And last month they took, I think, 9 cases, just from the top of my head. I think Sydney took 9, something like that. So let's say there are 50 cases between 2,000 and 2,700. Not all 50 can be scheduled. The capacity of the embassy is going to be restricted to whatever the embassy can handle. Now, in the case of Sydney, they could do some things, and maybe they could actually they could push it a little bit further. Maybe they get 20, maybe they could do 30, but they probably couldn't handle all of the numbers all the way up to 2,700. We'll see. I don't want to completely blow Sydney out of the water for being able to do this. I just want to use this particular embassy as a simple example to explain, and perhaps I should have picked another, but I'll carry on the theory. So you'll have the odd situation where an Australian in London, let's say, at 2690 can get an interview, whereas an Australian in Sydney at 2650 can't get an interview, right? Now that's based on the capacity of the embassy, not numerical control. To me, that's wrong. That's unfair. That's unwise, and the visa bulletin's purpose is to avoid that sort of unfairness. And so, frankly, it's pretty sad that they have done what they've done. Now, why have they done it? Well, it does help some people. It helps people who are on adjustment of status, for example, and they've got a high case number. Those people can now immediately file. If they've gone current, they can immediately file, and they can adjust their cases, which adjust their status in the States. Fabulous for them. There will be some embassies which will be probably low activity embassies that don't do very much, but for some reason have the ability to expand their capacity for a single month to handle quite a lot of cases. And in those embassies, we could see cases of very high numbers getting their visas. On the other hand, we'll have some of the larger embassies which are not backlogged currently, which will set their capacity based on the number of spaces they can accommodate, the number of interviews they can accommodate in a single month. And the numbers will only go to the level that capacity allows, right? So I'm a little dubious of taking individual embassies, but let's just pick on Nairobi for a minute. Nairobi has been a really good embassy, right? But they have a limit to the number of cases that they can see in any one given month. They have a capacity. And if they have some number of cases for every 1,000 cases, between 75,000 and 122,000 for Africa, then their capacity will only allow them to go so far, right? And so you could be at an embassy and, with a reasonably high case number and not get a chance, whereas somebody could be at some random little embassy that rarely does any cases, and for whatever reason is a quieter embassy, but they just happen to have the capacity to handle all of the cases that they're expected to handle, up to AF 122,000, right? Whatever is the highest case number. It's unfair, right? And there will, of course, lastly, there will be, as I've explained in my blog article, there will be those embassies which are already backlogged, like Addis Ababa, like Accra. This doesn't make a damn bit of difference to those embassies. They were never going to get to the highest case numbers anyway. And so they will do the best that they can do, but that's not going to get them anywhere near. I mean, Addis is still probably going to reach around about 28,000 or so. Accra, maybe 6,000 or 7,000. This is not going to, just because they've made all these cases current, it's not going to radically change the behavior of those backlog embassies that have already been restricted based on their capacity. So that's the world we're living in. Now, couple of points that I do explain in the blog article. I've taken the example of EU because I got a good question from someone who is at EU 30,300. And so that person was wondering, okay, the visa bulletin is now current up to 50,000. Can someone at case number 49,000 suddenly sort of, move past me and get scheduled? Well, that could happen at another embassy, but not at the embassy that guy is at, right? At that embassy, at a single embassy, numerical control is still enforced. The AV queue, the queue of cases in AV status, which are the ones that are then sent to the embassy for interviews as capacity allows, that will have filled for, let's say that person is in Embassy A, whatever that embassy is. Embassy A will have just had its AV queue, the queue for AV status, filled from 30,000 to 50,000, but in numerical order. And then the capacity of Embassy A will determine how far through 30 to 50,000 that particular embassy can go, right? And so maybe that embassy can go to 35,000, maybe it can go to 40,000. I don't know, but 30,300 will still be very early in that range and therefore more likely to be safe than a case number 49,000 at that embassy. right? But at some point, there will be an embassy that's able to handle in EU cases all the way up to 50,000, 49,999, and they will just, it'll be kind of bizarre, but we'll have embassies just a few miles from each other in Europe or in Africa or wherever, where the experience of people is going to be radically different based on geography. Because geography is now going to make the bloody difference, right? Thank you, government. That's a really good idea. That's going to make lots of sense to everybody, sure. I'm not going to get any questions on this. So anyway, I'm kind of frustrated with the government for what they've done. It's stupid as hell. But there it is. That's what they've done. It's great news for some people. Some people are going to be dancing in the street. But unfortunately, I've got this vision in my head of people out dancing in the street and the government and the embassies just peeing on them from above. That's the vision that's in my head right now. It's like, yeah, you're dancing in the street, but we're still going to pee on you. Because this isn't going to make sense. We're going to have so many confused people. The other Spectre that is brought up by this action, by this visa bulletin, is the Spectre that we saw in DV 2023, where visas actually ran out on September 6th. So we had the really stupid, sad, horrific situation where people literally turned up to embassies on September 7th, happy to have their interview planned on that day, as has been scheduled. They've already got all their paperwork in place. They've already had their medical performed. They've paid probably hundreds of dollars for the medicals for the families. Perhaps they've traveled overnight. Perhaps they've traveled for days. I don't know. I mean, literally, there are some cases where people have traveled for a long time to be at the embassy on September 7th. They turn up at the embassy on September 7th and they were turned away because visas had run out the previous night on September 6th. Now, could that happen again in DV 2024? This visa bulletin makes that a possibility. What will turn the possibility into reality, though, is whether or not the government overschedule, right? So the government now has some choices to make. They could be quite strict on embassy capacity, and individual embassies could be careful with their capacity. Or they could just say, hey, you've just made, these numbers current. We'll take as many as we can handle until the visas run out, right? They could do that. Now, if they go crazy like that, if they overschedule cases, then we could see visas running out at some point in September, which means that not only geography will come into place in terms of your chances to get a visa, but also another factor that you have absolutely no control over, which is the date that your visa interview is set on, right? And if your interview is set towards the end of the month and they overschedule and therefore exhaust the visas earlier, then you will also lose out. But you'll lose out in a worse way, because then you'll have had to have paid for whatever documents you needed to produce in order to get the visa interview ready. You'll have had your medical and spent hundreds of dollars on that. You'll have the impression you're going for an interview, but you're actually then going to be denied your interview at the last moment because visas will have run out. I really hope that scenario doesn't happen. It could happen. I will be able to kind of predict whether we're going to get into that situation or not, because I know roughly the amount of visa interviews we should be able to handle before hitting that sort of limit. And the magic number will be about 4,000 interviews roughly. It's not going to be a precise number. I'm not going to be able to say, hey, the visas are going to run out on September 23rd or September 25th is the danger zone. I mean, I'm not going to be able to say that, right? But as we're going through September, we will see the numbers ticking up, right? Because of the fantastic source we have from Zarthisius. So we will be able to monitor during September how close we're getting to a cap. But it's just not going to be fun. It's just going to be a bit of a weird process. We will know in August, fairly early August, we'll know how many visa interviews have been set for September. I'm praying, I'm not a religious person, but I'm praying that somebody at KCC has some intelligence to not schedule more than about 4,000 interviews. If they schedule more than 4,000 interviews, which they have the theoretical capacity to do so, if they schedule more than that, then they will start to hit into the level that could exhaust the visas earlier in September than the end of September. Adjustment of status cases are affected also by the exhaustion of visas. We saw that in DB 2023. So those cases must immediately be submitted, right? Get those through, push as hard as you can in order to get your AOS cases through as early as possible in September. I won't go into the details of it now, but I famously had a run-in with the San Francisco office when I did my adjustment status in DV 2020, DV 14, and they pushed my date into September, saying, no, there's no problem. There's always visas. Don't worry about it. We'll, you were available. I was current in June, but we'll push it into September. It doesn't matter. And I'm meanwhile like pulling my hair out. Look what I did. This is because of I pulled my hair out literally, trying to get my appointment, and getting frustrated with these people at San Francisco, who clearly didn't understand that there was a risk to my case because of visas being exhausted. But nevertheless, that's what happened. And clearly, as you can now see, I got my visa. Okay, so that's it. I wanted to publish the video because I have a large number of subscribers on my YouTube channel. Not everybody will have heard about the Visa Bulletin yet. I wanted to explain that. Go have a look at the Visa Bulletin numbers. Please do have a look at my blog, BritSimonSays.com. Feel free to ask me questions at BritSimonSays.com. I'm on the road at the moment. I'm on a vacation this week. And so I may not be able to answer instantly, but I'll answer each day. I'll spend at least a morning or an evening answering questions. So by all means, ask me questions there. And let me know your thoughts about what you think. Do you think it's a good idea that that this has happened? If you do, I'm not sure I can agree with you, but I'd like to hear your thoughts. And I'm thrilled for the people that will benefit from this, that thought they had no chance and now will have a chance. And and there will be many people, by the way, there will be many people who say, "Oh, you were so wrong. No, you were wrong. You said it would never go current, right?" I hope I've been careful to say, when I've said there's no reason for any region to go current, there isn't. I still stand by that. There is no reason. There's no logical reason why Africa needed to go current, for example. But they've done it, right? Which brings up what I usually say is I'm 99.9% certain, right? And there's always that 0.1% where I can't be sure what games they'll play at KCC, or the visa office, I should say, and whether they really understand, or whether they just look at this as some sort of silly math game. Because when they do this sort of stupid shit, what it means is they don't give a damn about the people. You might think this is wonderful, but it's not going to be wonderful, I promise you. For a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of heartbreak and confusion, and some people may lose quite a bit of money over this, and I don't think that's good. I personally don't think it's a good thing, and they were so close to having a sensible option. They could have just made the Visa Bulletin for Africa current to about 80,000, maybe 85,000 or something, and that would have been fine. That would have been plenty. There's, there would have been enough visas for everyone that they had made current. As it is, there are not enough visas for everyone that they've made current, and so people are going to be wondering what the hell happened. I was current and I never got my interview, or I got current, I got my interview, but visas ran out, and I spent all this money on medicals. And, you know, it's going to be sad, and it didn't have to be this way. But like I say, I'm an observer in this, and I know that there are going to be some people who will have a miracle happen, and for those people, I'm very happy. But those people's happiness will come at the cost of other people's genuine right to have been in front of those people who got the miracle happen, right? And that's just not right. Anyway, so congratulations to those that are current, which is a lot of people. Fingers crossed for those of you that have good embassies that can cope with this craziness. But I fear that there are going to be many that won't. And we'll see what happens over the next few weeks. One last thing. If you're a DV 2025 observer, you're probably wondering what the hell is this process all about. Yeah, it's nuts. But also you're probably wondering, did we get that information that Simon said we might get? No, we didn't. The information that we were waiting for that would come in, I've been saying would come either in the visa bulletin published in July or in August, didn't come in this visa bulletin. It's the number of selectees per country. It wasn't in this visa bulletin. It will be in the next visa bulletin that will be published in August, which will also be the visa bulletin that concerns the first interviews for DV 2025. So that'll be interesting. Okay, everybody, that's about it. I'm going to go back and have some fun at the beach. All right. I'm in Carlsbad, by the way. Carlsbad, Southern California. It's a lovely place here. I may even move here. Joking apart, I may move here. It's a lovely place. People here keep telling me, "Oh, it's so expensive to live here," but we find it cheap. Is from my area, I can get a similar property down here near the beach, lovely weather, perfect weather, perfect weather all year round. I can pay about 20% less for the house, and then I can go out to a restaurant, and instead of paying $15 or $20 for a glass of wine, I'll pay $10 for a glass of wine around here, or have a meal for the family for $100 rather than $180 or $200 where I live. So people here think it's expensive to live, but they have no idea. They haven't been to my area. So anyway, I'm going to enjoy that for a few days, and then we'll see. Who knows? All right, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.